Hi, everybody. Ashley Barnett here. I'm one of the pastors at Zionsville United Methodist Church, and I help with family ministry, in particular youth ministry. And joining me today is Jamilyns Williamson.
Hello, everybody. I'm excited to be here. I am the spouse of the Right Reverend David Williamson.
Jamil and I are in a small group together, so we're friends before that. We hang out in our small group, and we have girls that are about the same age. Actually, Nathan and Ella are also pretty much.
So it's funny when you do these kind of talks with friends because you have to remember to not do inside jokes, because people won't know. But I think it's really funny. Our kids started over Christmas break creating their own world, like their own city in Minecraft. So they have like a court of justice and everything. So every once in a while, I'll hear Ella, Ashley is youngest, yelling, "I'm going to sue you." And Nathan saying, "We're taking it to court." I thought it was so funny. And then finally, one day, Margaret, my daughter, says, "We decided we should probably build a church in the community." And I thought, oh my gosh, if that's not hysterical, all these PKs running around together. And it finally dawns on one of them that they should have a church.
Maybe we should have a church.
Minecraft. They have the justice part, not the grace, apparently. So yeah.
It's just fun to hear them all listen to them play, and lots of screaming sometimes, but it's all in good nature. So
yeah.
So we're just moving from Holy Week.
I feel like we forgot to start off with the Easter message. He is risen.
He is risen. That is right.
All right, now we've done it, everybody.
Before we can get to the resurrection, we have to go through Maundy, Thursday, and Good Friday.
Yeah, that's a lot of feelings
for the church,
that's
right?
A lot of talking feelings for me. I'm not sure about
that. You can do this. I have no doubt.
So yeah, we have to talk about Good Friday. I loved what Dave said in his sermon on Sunday. He talks about the tomb, as most preachers do on Easter, but he said he's talking about Mary Magdalene and how in all the Gospels she's one of the women who goes to the tomb, but in the Gospel of John, she's by herself. And it's also a little different because in the Gospel of John, she's going back to the tomb to grieve, where in the other Gospels, she's part of a group of women who are going to anoint Jesus after he has been in the tomb, because it was all done very hastily. But I wanted just to repeat this quote because I think it really stuck to me when I thought about some of the work that I'm doing in the world. It says, "Mary doesn't return to the tomb to anoint Jesus's body. She simply comes to grieve the one she loved." And that tells us something about this garden. It's not a place of beauty or peace, the dew on the roses. No, it's a place of sadness and loss. And then he gives us a big question to think about. He asks, do you know that kind of garden?
Yeah, I think a lot of times when we think of garden with the Bible, we paint this rosy picture, right? And it's full of singing and beautiful flowers. But back to Maundy, Thursday, and Good Friday, that garden looks completely different. So what's your garden, Jamilyns?
I was thinking about this in terms of the work that I do. So I am the founder and CEO of a nonprofit called Zamilyns, and we work in Haiti, and we exist to improve and transform the future of Haitian families, one house at a time. And so I think a lot about, every dedication we have for me is like a little Easter, because it's a time for this family to experience resurrection in a way. But before you can have resurrection, as you're saying, there is a Good Friday for all of us, right? And
right.
For me, being in Haiti on January 12th. That was really my garden when that earthquake happened in 2010. And seeing so many of the people that we loved dearly lose their homes, seeing the school that we worked at for 2 years completely crumble, the house that Dave and I lived in for 2 years, our first 2 years of marriage completely crumbled. For me, that really was, I call that day the point of demarcation in my life. It was my garden. It was this dark, dark moment of being there. I mean, I was very fortunate that we weren't in a community that lost many lives, but we were in a community that lost their hope pretty darn quickly.
Right.
And so when I think about my garden, I think about that day because that really was the catalyst that helped us really create a ministry in Fondwa. Up until that point, we had just been visiting with friends that we would take from our churches. We'd play with the kids at the orphanage,
Sure.
but we didn't per se have projects,
Right.
you know. And so, but then after that, we did because one of my best friends lost her house down there, and within months we had enough money to rebuild it without even asking anybody for money. So that was really my garden, and that is what launched us into 8 years later launching Zombie Fondwa with a more specific focus on how we wanted to build these houses, what we wanted them to look like, who would receive them, all that kind of work. And so, we're almost 3 years in. It'll be 3 years in November. We had a goal to build 40 houses in 3 years, and we're going to make that goal. But we started thinking now, what are some other things? I mean, we got to the point where we were building houses because the community asked us to. We've
Sure.
always tried to do whatever the community needed us to do. So in January, I was back there again, 11 years after the earthquake, and met with our leadership team in Fondwa and said, okay, what else could we be doing? And they told us they would really like for us to focus on trees. They wanted us, Fondwa is a very deforested community, and they wanted us to put some effort into reforestation.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah.
So my garden for me really is all the work that I feel like we could be doing in Fondwa. For
Yeah.
sure.
Sure. And I think everybody's garden looks different, right? It's whatever that moment is for us that defines us and whatever that Good Friday garden looks like. I know for me, I think the one for me would be when I had the miscarriage. And we lost the child, and it was a defining moment. It was one that led me down and into the path of ministry. And so it is a resurrection story because, in that moment I thought, how am I going to get through this pain? How do I get through the suffering? But I did come out of it. And we eventually had another child. That doesn't always happen. But beyond that, God just completely brought this whole new career to me through that. So everybody's garden looks a little different, and yours is different. Mine's different. Everybody would have a different story to share.
Yeah, one of the things, John Wesley, he founded the Methodist Church. And one of the things that he always would preach about is how God can take the dark Good Fridays and turn them into Easter. So, we would say something good comes out of everything.
Yes.
I kind of like saying every Good Friday does have an Easter because
Yes.
sometimes you don't want to feel like the pain that you're going through can end up being something good. But what I wonder is thinking about it is, does each of our gardens have an opportunity to grow something beautiful? And so, like, if we're coming out of this place of sadness, of a miscarriage, or experiencing, a natural disaster, how much time do we need to be able to start thinking about something blooming from that?
And I don't think I ever during that time thought about something blooming or growing from that. I think it was just as I healed and went through the grieving process, with time it happened. It wasn't an overnight. It wasn't even the next month. It was actually years before could look back and go, God took that moment, that Good Friday garden, and made it into this beautiful resurrection Easter.
Yeah. Well, I think too, what's hard is you can't live on Good Friday.
No.
You have to be willing to leave that spot.
Yes.
And, I'm sure that you went through a lot of counseling after your miscarriage. I went through a lot of counseling after the earthquake.
Yes.
And one of the things that we kept talking about is leaving that moment doesn't mean you're forgetting it or
No.
not honoring it. It just means that you're moving forward towards trying to make your life more joyful. Because I fully believe God has created us to be joyful people, which means that we can learn from those garden moments, but we have to figure out how to move towards Easter. And it was hard for me to stop living in that sorrow because I felt like that sorrow was defining me in that moment. But
Mhm.
being open to the fact that there is this sacrifice for us that was called Good Friday that led us to Easter, which gives us an opportunity to be more of people of hope. And so I always tell people I don't want you to rush through the grief
No.
that you go through because you need that grief to be able to mold you and make you be the person you're going to be post grief. And so, in fact, something that a tradition, a custom that they have in Haiti is when you lose your mother or a spouse, you wear black for an entire year, no color. And so then for a whole year, people know that you're still grieving.
Yeah.
That you have not rushed to Easter just yet, that you're taking your time. And I have a really good friend, her mom died and she's been wearing black for an entire year and she's our age. And I said to her the other day, when is the color come back? And she's like, I have 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So, but like now she's ready, right? Like
Ready. Yeah. And
now she's ready.
I always tell people, there is no time frame for grief and it looks completely different for everybody.
Yeah.
You can't tell somebody, oh, these are the steps you're going to go through because you're going to go forward and back. And it's a very different process that you need to walk through, but you can't gauge it what somebody else has done when they're in their Good Friday garden.
Yeah. So let's just skip ahead 3 days to Easter, shall we?
Easter!
All right, everybody, you need to sit in your grief, but let's get going to Easter.
Because Jesus is risen.
He's risen indeed. So going on, Dave he said later in his sermon, Mary unwittingly affirms Jesus's true identity. He is the quintessential gardener, the one who faithfully tends and cares for all creation, the one who fulfills the purpose and promise of the original gardeners, who reverses Adam's choice in order to rewrite the end of the story. He is the sower and the seed of God's kingdom, the one who surrendered his life and was buried in the ground in order to bring forth new life. Now, listen, I think at that point we should have had confetti cannons going off.
I didn't think of that in time.
I know it would have been so great, but
Yes.
It's true. This whole idea of reversing everything. And I especially like that Dave said Adam and not Eve. I feel like that's very progressive and feminist of him. That's very nice.
It was very nice. I also
I've done a lot of work with him over the last 18 years. So you get to Easter. I do want to just share something that I'm really excited about, that when Dave was talking, I was like, oh my gosh, that's exactly what Zamilyns is doing now. So I'd mentioned that the leadership had asked us to build trees or not build them, you plant them.
Yeah.
But when Dave and I were in Haiti in January, we saw this huge strip of barren land. We were standing at the school and we kind of looked out on the valley and I said, I've never really noticed how barren this piece of land is. And it's kind of narrow. It probably is, a couple acres, I'm guessing. And so he left. And then I had this meeting with the leadership team, and they said, I think we really need to plant more trees. Let's try and do a reforestation project. And it was like, almost like God had given this vision. I mean, I've always looked out at this and never noticed it. And I
Right.
said, what about this piece of land? And they were like, oh, that would be perfect, because people from all parts of Fondois will be able to see it. So we have 2 agronomists that graduated from the University of Fondois who have been looking for a job. So we've hired them. We picked them to lead this project, and we're going to plant 6,000 trees on this piece of land.
Wow. That's
And so you have like this garden moment, like this barren land. And by the end of this year, you'll see 6,000 little saplings just starting to grow and, creating new life on this piece of land. Which, when you see trees grow in this part of Haiti, where so many trees had to be cut down in order for families to make charcoal out of the wood, to be able just to have food to feed their families. It's a chance to be able to offer hope. Like, we're not forgetting about you. God hasn't forgotten about you. We have a chance to create new life, to say thanks for the creation and all that. I'm very excited about it. I'm really, really excited.
That sounds like a wonderful, wonderful project. I think as you were talking, resurrection, right? It's this promise of new beginnings, right? In our life. And what a wonderful story of just new beginnings for the people in Haiti.
Yeah. And we're going to be able to provide 20 jobs to people in the process. Planting 6,000 trees isn't something a couple people can do. So, I like to think that it's offering new life to people who haven't had jobs as well. And, the man who owns this land signed a contract with us that he won't cut any of the trees down, that he will take care of them and water them for 10 years. And then in 10 years, they'll be grown, and the land will have recultivated at that point. But even he will get something out of it, because in 10 years, he can harvest some of them, or he can harvest the fruit and sell them. And so it's just exciting when there's an opportunity to be able to share hope with so many different people. And, we started off this organization really wanting to build houses for people, but being able to plant trees is another really exciting way to be a part of it too. And I would not be doing my job if I didn't say that April 22nd is Earth Day. And so we're trying to raise the money for the 6,000 trees, and it's $1 a tree. So if you want to buy a tree on Earth Day, you can go to zamifondwa.com and you can buy a tree and be a part of it.
As you were talking, you said the man who is working with you, who has the land, he promised not to cut down any trees, right? And I was thinking about Jesus and the promise, and God sending him, and the promises that, we have new life in him because of his death and resurrection. And we're promised life beyond death. And so it was just making me think, when you were talking about he'd promised not to cut any trees, which is leading to new life. Well, Jesus promised, we have new life because of what he did for us. So
I think that's a great place to end our little talk today.
Yeah, I think so. It's been great just chatting with you.
It is nice. I always leave wanting more. And so we'll have to do this again.
I started saying we need to do this again. Maybe the 3 of us, me, you, and Kim, should do one together sometime.
Ooh, like a round table.
Everybody
in the comments, say that you want that.
Yes, a round table with the 3 of us.
Yeah.
Well,
all right. Well, you have a wonderful day.
All right, you too. Thank you.
Right, everybody else, thanks for listening. Go find your new hope.
Bye.
Bye.